Today we're going to be looking at Street Fighter Legends Volume 1 Sakura. This is basically her origin story. Welcome to the complete story series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read it dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. In Japan, a teacher readies himself. His student has a lot to learn, but with time, they too can learn from the master, Master Dan Hibiki! Dan took Sakura lightly because of her cute and innocent facade, but deep down he saw the heartbeat of a warrior. Dan was taken by surprise by her power, as limited as it was. She would be no match for Dan if he used his power to its fullest. Her speed and agility compared to his was adequate. He wanted to spare her the embarrassment of losing so that she could feel the feeling of victory, even as small as it may be. But after some thought, Dan realized how he did her a disservice by allowing her to win their fight. He saw the spark inside of her to be a great martial artist, and she just may be worthy of learning the secret teachings of the Sayoko Ryu. Now, it was Dan's desire, no, his duty, to give her a proper rematch, to gauge her true potential. And just then he realizes he's talking out loud to some kids who have no idea who he is. Just who is he? Dan Hibiki, founder of the Sakio Ryu School of Martial Arts. Sakio Ryu? Never heard of it, one of the kids mentions. Dan tells them only because the great students know its greatest secrets. So if you have what it takes, seek out his dojo. However, the kids don't seem very interested and they kind of dismiss Dan. Before leaving though, Dan thinks about how his worthy opponent Sakura might just be his future protege, and he rolls off down the street. The next day, Sakura is riding her bike down the busy streets late again for school. So it is time for Sakura's special tardiness recovery technique. Sakura has been staying up late training to be a great fighter, but staying up late has been affecting her school activities. During history class, Sakura's friend Ki tries to wake her up, but quickly gets called out by their teacher to finish their conversation in the hallway. Ki tries to tell Sakura that she should be focused on other things like getting a boy to ask her out instead of how to beat him up. But before even finishing, Sakura already seems to have dozed back off. It is not until Ki reminds Sakura of the meeting with Ryu online the next day that Sakura instantly perks back up, thinking of all of the great advice that he will have for her training. After school, Sakura hurries home, but there is somebody following her. It's Dan. The next morning, Sakura sits up in bed talking to Ryu over IM, when Ryu clearly has no clue how to use computers, let alone understand Sakura and all of her internet terms. Ryu tells Sakura how interesting his journey has been, and he thinks learning from many different kinds of fighters could be the key to being the best martial artist out there, and then he signs off. Sakura lays back down thinking to herself about how she could learn from other fighters, and that's when she looks up and notices a poster of Rainbow Mika, or Mika for those in the know. Sakura grabs her phone and she calls her friend Hinata and tells her that they are going to the wrestling match. Outside of Sakura's home, Dan has been waiting after shooting an arrow with a letter attached to it. But eventually, he realizes that no one's going to notice his arrow, so he makes a big commotion, and Sakura's brother walks out seeing him and then calls for Sakura. But she is in such a hurry that she just runs Dan over with her bike on the way to the match. Not noticing anything, she continues riding until she meets up with Hinata and Ki at the stadium. They all go inside, and in there they find Rainbow Mika is beating up Zangief, and Sakura and Hinata begin yelling and cheering while Ki gets shoved over. Sakura begins taking pictures to help with their training when Ki asks her why when all of this stuff is fake, but Sakura doesn't seem to think so. After hitting Zangief with a chair to the back, Rainbow Mika has been announced the winner. Rainbow Mika then tells all of her fans thank you, and the announcer tells everyone that if they want an autograph, she'll be outside. Sakura runs off to get a belt signed, and Hinata goes home, but Ki stays to keep her company. That's when Zangief gets back up and he calls out Rainbow once again, but the janitor tells him that everyone's left the ring. Outside, Sakura and Ki wait in line to have Rainbow sign her replica belt. Sakura begins telling Rainbow how much of a fan she is and how she can recognize most of her moves, but that's when everyone hears Fuwara, 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 and people in the crowd begin flying in all directions as Zangief starts using his double lariat until he reaches the signing booth. With his overly large structure, he challenges Rainbow to a rematch. Dan wakes up the next morning with a basketball bouncing off of his head, and he thinks how Sakura caught him off guard with her bicycle attack, so he runs to the bus stop. After waiting in line though, the driver tells Dan that it's full and leaves him behind. Back at the stadium, Zangief begins his attacks on Rainbow, but Rainbow and Sakura jump away. Rainbow puts Zangief in a headlock, and Sakura decides it's best to join in. The two of them leap into the air and slam Zangief back down, but Zangief flexes and he throws the girls away. Rainbow thinks that Zangief might be actually wrestling, for real, and Sakura asks why wouldn't he be? What kind of faker would pretend to fight, right? Rainbow looks back and tells her, yeah, that would be embarrassing, wouldn't it? Just when Zangief comes flying in with a drop kick of his own. Sakura manages to push Rainbow out of the way, but takes the giant boots to the chest. Rainbow then leaps in for her attack, but Zangief knocks her away. Zangief then gets back up, telling her that it's time that she felt the fury of Zangief, the Red Cyclone. He prepares his attack, banishing flat. Then as he was posing, there was a slap that could be heard everywhere. His hand slapped Rainbow's butt. and then silence. Rainbow quickly begins her special, Rainbow Hip Rush! While Zangief steps back in pain, Rainbow calls out Sakura, asking her if she remembers how WrestlePalooza ended. Of course she does, and she runs up, kneeling behind Zangief's legs, and kick! Zangief goes crashing into the tables, but before Sakura can even enjoy the victory, Zangief stands back up, towering over her. Just outside, Dan finally makes it to the stadium, asking what's going on, and the reporter tells him that a fight broke out with Zangief, Rainbow Mika, and some girl with a headband. Back inside, Sakura tries to calm down Zangief until Rainbow calls him out, calling him a dumb grizzly bear. As soon as he turns around, Rainbow sprays Zangief with a fire extinguisher, blinding him. He then starts grabbing and missing randomly until finally he grabs Dan Hibiki. He throws him into the air, unleashing his final atomic buster. After looking down and seeing it's not who he thought it was, Rainbow jumps in with her wingless airplane and throws Zangief where Sakura is ready with her replica belt to perform a Shoryuken. Finally defeating Zangief, all of the reporters rush in, trampling over Dan to get a word with Rainbow. Meanwhile, at the Kanzuki residence, I really couldn't have done it without my partner here, Sakura. Give her a round of applause, everyone. And that's when a giant TV shatters as a cooler is thrown at it. Sakura, stealing all of the glory when your skills aren't even in my league. Soon, you will get what's coming to you, Karin shouts from her beach island in her home. Get me another lemonade and a new TV. A couple of days later, at a local diner, Sakura is sitting with a few of her friends, and as she's showing off pictures of her and Rainbow, they all begin to hear whoop, 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 and they look outside to see a helicopter overhead and men jumping out. The men throw down confetti and a red carpet rolls out, revealing Karin. Elsewhere, Dan finally wakes up from being beat on by Zangief, and he hears the sound of a video game. He comments on how he was out longer than normal, and the nurse turns on the TV for him. And that's when he sees a reporter showing Karin walking out of her golden helicopter to Sakura, telling her that it's time for a rematch. Sakura tries to tell Karin that she's too busy with training in school to just keep winning, and Karin tells her that she's just too scared of embarrassing herself and her master. After they go back and forth, Karin finally tells her, pick anything and she'll beat her at it. So Sakura looks up to see a billboard with a man in a hot dog suit and she says, hot dogs! I challenge you to a hot dog eating contest. Disgusted with processed meat byproducts, Karin agrees. But after this battle, the next match is my choice, deal? Deal, Sakura says, reaching out to shake Karin's hand, but she just ignores it, turning back to the pilot, telling him to take off, without everyone on board. Later that day at the stadium for the hot dog eating contest, Sakura, Karin, and all of Sakura's friends all take their positions in the hot dog eating contest. The announcer tells everyone to arise for the guest judge of the hot dog contest, Chairman E. Honda. E. Honda readies the girls and yells the start of the competition. Sakura grabs a handful of hot dogs and starts eating them, but that's when she looks up and sees Karin is almost done with her plate. I can't lose, Sakura says, tightening her headband, and then she goes face first into the pile of hot dogs. Over in the back of the crowd, Hanada notices something on her camcorder. Everyone gathers around to see Karin has been stuffing the hot dogs under the table. So Sakura's friends launch a volleyball right at Karin's table. The table flips over, revealing that one of her friends has been eating the hot dogs underneath the table the whole time, at least most of them. Karin, realizing that she's now been found out, kneels down with Sakura and tells her that she's sorry for cheating, and she tells Sakura that she is in no condition to battle. But with a snap of her finger, she challenges to a handicapped anything goes battle. Sakura thinks to herself, this isn't a fight that she can win. She's full of hot dogs. But before Karin and her goons attack, all of Sakura's friends jump in and they begin fighting with Karin and her goons. As the dust clears, one of the goons looks up to see one of Sakura's friends setting himself up for a powerful swing down. The man charges at him, but suddenly trips up, falling flat on his face, seeing Ki helping the group. With everyone fighting Karin's goons, now the fight of Karin versus Sakura can properly begin. No more hot dogs, no more goons. Karin quickly jumps in for a kick and Sakura deflects it, but has to stop to hold herself from throwing up, because she's still full of hot dog. As Sakura starts her attack, she thinks about how she's really slow right now, missing her kicks, and her punches are being deflected. So Karin grabs Sakura's fist and kicks her in the stomach, and then she continues punching her over and over, knocking her down. Just as Karin starts to take in her victory, Sakura comes back with a Hadouken, sending Karin flying over the table. Thankfully, just in time to grab Hanada's backpack to barf in it. Karin jumps back up, telling her, you don't know what you started! Enough, E. Honda declares. I have seen enough of this to declare a true victor. E. Honda stands there holding up the trophy for the hot dog eating competition, while Sakura and Karin begin to argue over which one of them should get it. E. Honda declares that the winner is Ishizaki, the man who was helping Karin cheat because he ate more hot dogs than Sakura and Karin combined. Once he receives his trophy, Ishizaki runs over to offer it to Karin, and she just looks down to him. Congratulations, the trophy is yours. You deserve it. Now take me home. And she walks off with Ishizaki. As Karin leaves, everyone comments on how Karin was kinda nice, but Sakura is kinda bummed that she lost. E. Honda tells Sakura that it doesn't matter if you lose. You just have to keep going, learn from your defeat, and use it to push forward. The next day, Sakura rushes home but notices someone is waiting there for her, and that someone is Dan Hibiki. Dan came to provide Sakura with a proper rematch because he failed to reveal his true power. If she is worthy enough, she will get the rare privilege of learning the secret teachings of his school. He begins rolling and showing his power, shouting, "The battle now begins!" Huh? Sakura says, looking up. Sorry, I was tying my shoelace. Do you want to fight? Sakura braces herself as Dan launches himself with his kick that Sakura easily counters. Dan then tells Sakura that was respectable, but an amateur counterattack, and he launches himself again with another punch. With her flower kick, Sakura knocks Dan back down on his face. And then she tells him that she really needs to get to class, so... But that's when she is surprised, because Dan is exclaiming that he has this feeling, as he begins to stand up with his new power. This negative energy. Could this be the forbidden power that Master Guken hid from me that I wish to use to avenge my father's death? The invincible destructive force of the Dark Hado? Forgive me, Sakura. I can resist his dark power no longer. I have no choice but to unleash it! And just then, Dan begins floating towards Sakura. However, this ultimate attack is stopped by a backpack. And Sakura takes this chance to use everything that she has learned from Ryu, Rainbow, Zangief, E Honda, and Dan himself. She winds up and launches her uppercut attack, knocking Dan on the ground. However, Dan is still not done, but Sakura is. And she unleashes everything on Dan as everyone watches. The next day, somewhere in China, Ryu sits at a computer trying to talk to Sakura. Sakura tells him about how she's learned so much from training with all of the other fighters, even the bad ones, and she looks up to listen to Dan from his hospital bed. After careful consideration, I will bestow upon you the profound honor of joining my dojo. With proper tutelage, you may just be as great as me one day. And with this great honor, Sakura agrees to join Dan in his dojo. We have a lot more of these prequel stories and other side stories involving the Street Fighter universe, so if you want more, subscribe to the channel and follow us on Twitter @EligibleMonster, and we'll see you next time right here.